I'm just interested to find out, are you a baseball fan? And is that why you decided to direct and become a little fascinated with the league?
Oh, I grew up a baseball fan. My dad, I grew up in the 60s, and my dad, 1964, his favorite team was the St. Louis Cardinals. And I became a huge Cardinal fan. So, that team had Lou Brock and Kurt Flood and Bob Gibson and Bill White. And so I was a Cardinal fan as a grown man. I took my son in the 90s. Maybe it was I took my son when he was in the 90s, and when he was 15, to see Ozzie Smith, play in St. Louis. So I was a big baseball fan up until the 2000s, and then I sort of stopped. But, I loved baseball as a kid. And working on this film sort of reignited my love for baseball again.
I was so fascinated by what I saw, because I learned about some people that I didn't know. I didn't know about the Cumberland. I didn't know about the Cumberland team. I didn't know about the Pittsburgh Crawfords. I didn't know about Ruth Foster or Effa Manley. And I was especially fascinated by her, because I think in the film you guys said that we weren't quite sure whether she was passing or if she was white or what she was. But I was fascinated about the fact, you're like, yeah. I was fascinated by the fact that there was a woman wheeling and dealing during this time. So having said all of that, how extensive was the research for this? Because there was a lot of archival footage and clippings and interviews. It was more so than any I've ever seen in any documentary, including the ones of yours that I've seen. How long did it take to compile that?
We had a wonderful archival researcher / producer named Helen Russell. And she worked on the film even before we started production. I think she worked on it a year doing research. And she was able to find a lot of Negro League aficionados, people who love the Negro Leagues, who had their own sort of archive that she was able to bring to us. And then we reached out to, Quincy Troop, the poet. Quincy Troop's dad was a Negro League catcher. And his dad, when he was in the Negro Leagues, had shot footage, which some of that's in the film. So I went up to Quincy's apartment in Harlem to look at some of that footage, and then we licensed some of that from him. So there was a cornucopia of stuff that we were able to access. And initially, quite honestly, I didn't think we were going to have enough footage to tell the story, because I had seen a lot of it before. It was always the same stuff. But now we were able to find new stuff I had never seen myself before.
So. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff I had never seen before, because I know, growing up, I remember the only reference to the baseball league, the Negro baseball league, that I ever saw was in this film called Bingo Long
and the Traveling Stars and Motor Kings.
Yeah,
that's what everybody
says. And Richard Pryor, yeah.
And James Earl Jones.
Yes, and James Earl Jones. That was the only film I'd ever seen that addressed that issue. So it made me curious. I was like, let me go and see if there's any other films. And there weren't really a whole bunch of other films. I mean, like, there was a feature film, I think it was called Soul of the Game, that talked about Josh and Satchel.
Yeah, wasn't what's the name in it? Delroy Lindo.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. And so do you think that this is the right time for this story? Because we've lost quite a few of the people that are spoken about in the doc. Do you think this is the right time to reinfuse this type of Black history, especially since we're in a time where Black history is literally on the docket to be erased from our country's culture and education in schools?
Listen, I would say this to you.
Okay.
Every time is the right time for Black people's stories to be told. Every time, every day, every year, not just during February, Black History Month, every time. Because and I know, this notion that they need to erase our stories is complete sabotage, in terms of trying to make people think again that American history was George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. American history was that stuff. American history included our stories that we're telling about the Negro Leagues, about, Zora Neale Hurston, about Richard Wright, about, the Tulsa race massacres. These are all a part of American history. And for people to be saying, well, we don't want to, have our children think that we white people are oppressors. Well, they need to understand what they were.
They kind of were. So there's that. Like, it's not a lie. It happened.
It happened. So
it happened. I was wondering if you had any thoughts about the fact that once Jackie Robinson integrated the league, how it kind of was the beginning of the demise of the Negro League. Do you have any thoughts about that? Because I do.
but isn't that the story of America and integration? Basically they told us be separate, stay in your own lane, and then when those doors start to open, we as Black people, those who were professionals and had opportunities to move out of their communities, they did. Now, what did they do economically to these segregated communities? They went downhill. And we've seen it happen across the country. Jackie Robinson integrated the major leagues. Wow, wasn't that great? But we forget the impact it had on the Negro League teams within the Black communities for the next 12 years that led to the demise of those communities and of the Negro Leagues. So, it's this story of integration is a very complicated one. It's not an easy one. Integration can mean one thing to one group of people and mean something else to another group of people.
You're not wrong. You are not wrong, not by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
One of the things, to lighten it up a little bit, one of the things that made me laugh out loud was the fact that when you brought up the fact about how in the Black church, how they would skew the time of the service around when the games were happening. Yeah. And so I remember seeing footage of Black people going to the games. And as a child, I always wondered, I'm like, why are people always so dressed up going to a baseball game? And this documentary told me why.
Yeah, they came out from church. They were
coming from church.
Yeah. But, also remember, too, you look at the images of us in those 30s and 40s, we were always dressed up. I have some images of my dad when he was like 22. When he first got to Harlem, slick, suit, glasses, sharp.
He was casket sharp, huh?
Yeah, wearing those Stacey Adams shoes.
So, having expounded upon everything that we've discussed in this short period of time, what is the one takeaway that you want people to have when they see this film?
Much like my other films, be it about Arthur Ashe, be it about the Negro Leagues, be it about August Wilson, that our community and some of the people in our community were phenomenal, creative, imaginative. And our stories always have been marginalized. And my job, like Stanley Nelson's job or Louis Messiah's job or, all of us filmmakers of color, is to put our stories front and center. That's what we're here for. And that's what I hope people understand when they see this, that the Negro League story, the story of the league, is an American story.
Couldn't have ended this interview on a better note. Sam Pollard, you are the real deal. You are my dude. I love you. I love your films. I'm a ride or die fan. I'm always going to support everything you do, always till the end of time, because your work is just, I don't even have words for it. It's something else.
Thanks very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.